When the news broke that Georgie and Mandy would be exiting young Sheldon following their first marriage arc, fans were left with mixed emotions. Joy at the couple's happy ending, and a twinge of sadness at the sudden goodbye. It wasn't just the characters leaving, it was a whole subplot, a rhythm, a dynamic that had helped shape the show's heart. Their departure didn't just close a chapter, it left another one difficult to finish. For those who've been following young Sheldon closely, the unexpected character exit brought more than just an emotional shift. It created a narrative vacuum in a storyline many had hoped would find its full resolution. Let's take a look at what made Georgie and Mandy's exit such a unique challenge for the show's storytelling, and why one lingering story may never get the closure it deserves. From teenage parenthood to marriage, the unexpected journey. Georgie Cooper was never supposed to be the stable one. From the early seasons, he was portrayed as the classic underachieving big brother, full of charm, but lacking focus. Mandy, in contrast, was older, independent, and fiercely reluctant to be tethered to a teenage boy when she discovered she was pregnant. And yet, somehow, their arcs collided in a way that felt real. It wasn't a love at first sight fairy tale. It was messy, awkward, and at times heartbreaking. But it was also filled with growth, especially for Georgie, who transitioned from an aimless teen to a father trying, and sometimes failing, to do the right thing. Mandy, for her part, softened into her role, letting herself trust, letting herself hope. Their marriage was less about a romantic crescendo and more about mutual respect, a shared sense of duty, and, yes, love, but the quieter kind. The kind that grows, not explodes. So when they finally tied the knot, it felt earned. But right when it seemed like the show was setting the stage for a new chapter, one of domestic comedy, young parenthood, and the challenges of building a life together, the characters exited. Georgie and Mandy got their send-off, but it left something else behind. An unfinished melody in the life of another character. The story that got harder to tell. Missy's quiet downfall. Missy Cooper had always been the overlooked gem of young Sheldon, wisecracking, emotionally intuitive, and too often caught in the wake of her brother's genius. As Sheldon's fame and quirks consumed the family's attention, Missy was the one quietly watching everything unfold. And lately, her story had taken a darker turn. Missy's rebellion, loneliness, and emotional unraveling had been building. The death of her father loomed in the show's future timeline, and fans already knew how that tragedy would eventually send her spiraling in the Big Bang Theory. But young Sheldon had been doing something powerful, slowly, carefully planting seeds of her struggle. Georgie and Mandy were, in many ways, a grounding force. Their chaos distracted from Sheldon's overwhelming spotlight, giving Missy another axis of her family to lean into. Georgie was her big brother, not always responsible, but always present. And Mandy, while not officially her sister, was an adult female voice in the house who wasn't just a mom or a teacher. With their exit, Missy loses not just relatives, but a narrative counterbalance. A house a little too quiet. The Cooper household, without Georgie and Mandy, suddenly feels thinner. The laughter of baby Cece, the flustered banter of two young parents trying to find their footing, gone, and in their place is a more somber silence. Mary and George Sr. are preoccupied, George with work and his own marital tensions, Mary with her religiosity and Sheldon's needs. Mima, while still around, drifts in and out of episodes, often more comic relief than core support, and Sheldon, by nature, cannot be counted on for emotional availability. So where does that leave Missy? Her story, once poised for a deeper exploration, perhaps involving mentorship from Mandy or sibling talks with Georgie, now feels a bit adrift. The writers can still pursue her arc, of course, but the natural bridges are gone, and with them, the gentler entry points into her descent. This isn't to say that characters shouldn't leave. In fact, in real life, people exit at pivotal moments. Sometimes they move away, sometimes they start families and shift their priorities. That kind of disruption is realistic. But from a storytelling perspective, Georgie and Mandy's exit removes emotional scaffolding that had quietly been holding up Missy's narrative. And it makes telling her story, especially the darker, more internal parts, more challenging without feeling abrupt or forced. The weight of spin-off decisions, of course. Part of this shift stems from the upcoming Georgie and Mandy spin-off, which takes the newlyweds into their own show. That's exciting, especially for fans who've grown attached to their chemistry and want to see how their marriage, and parenting, evolves outside the Cooper home. But it also makes it clear that young Sheldon is preparing to transition. The tone is shifting. The cast is slowly dispersing. And as the show inches closer to George Sr.'s death, the inevitable shadow hanging over everything, the mood is becoming more somber. This tonal pivot makes sense. But it's a tightrope. How do you balance the heavy, emotional beats of loss and growing up with the comedic roots the show was built on? Georgie and Mandy's lightness, their accidental tenderness, was one way the show maintained that balance. Without them, the scale tips. A farewell with lingering echoes. It's important to note, Georgie and Mandy didn't leave in a blaze of drama. Their exit was gentle, hopeful. In a show that often centers around dysfunction, their union was a rare symbol of success. That has its own kind of power. And maybe, in time, the writers of Young Sheldon, or its spin-offs, will circle back to the threads left dangling. Maybe we'll see Missy in a new light, or find closure in unexpected places. But for now, their absence is felt. Not in the dramatic way a death or a betrayal might ripple, but in the quiet gaps, the jokes that go unanswered, the storylines that suddenly veer in a new direction. It's a reminder that every character carries weight, even when their stories aren't at the forefront, and when they leave, even for happy reasons, someone else's story may never quite finish the way it was meant to. Would you like me to tailor this more for publication, add sources or references, or adjust it into a different tone or format, like a blog, review, or editorial?